To be able to talk about dinosaurs first, it is necessary to recap what is known about them so far. First, scientists have identified over 700 species of dinosaurs to date. Of these, only 5 species have complete skeletons, while the rest are just isolated bones. How were the others identified? Through the imagination of paleontologists. The rivalry between fossil collectors Marsh and Cope in the 1870s is well known. Together, they invented over 130 species. Marsh published Cope's mistakes, even accusing him of putting the head in place of the tail in an attempt to reconstruct a marine reptile fossil. In more recent times, some scientists have discovered bones that they considered to be dinosaur bones, leading to the birth of new species. Unfortunately for them, after a while it turned out that those fossils were human. But those newly emerged dinosaur species have remained in books. How do our researchers determine the age of fossils? How do they know that dinosaurs appeared 240 million years ago and disappeared 66 million years ago? If you think of carbon, uranium, or potassium dating, you are mistaken. These methods only work for fossils that are several thousand years old, not millions. So what is the calculation method? The answer is simple: the imagination of paleontologists. In the conception of evolutionists, a certain period of time is needed for a simple life form to evolve into a dinosaur. Thus, the researcher assumes a certain period of time for each species, ultimately achieving an exact dating. You don't have to be a genius to realize that assumptions cannot be classified as scientific truth. Looking at things from this perspective, we realize that it is possible that dinosaurs were not as many as we are told, did not live when we are told, and did not look as we are told. Perhaps they did not disappear when we are told either. However, if dinosaurs did live when evolutionists believe, what happened to them? The general opinion of paleontologists is that they disappeared suddenly for unknown reasons. For scientists, the most likely cause of their disappearance would be the collision of Earth with an asteroid. However, this hypothesis has many flaws. If a celestial body did indeed cause the disappearance of the dinosaurs, how do we explain the elimination of only large reptiles, not other animals? Or how do we explain that, after the disappearance of dinosaurs, species of animals different from those that lived until then appeared on Earth? We should believe that an asteroid killed the tyrannosaurs and brontosaurs, but turned pterodactyls into birds and triceratops into rhinoceros. In other words, scientists do not have a common-sense explanation for what caused the sudden disappearance of dinosaurs and their replacement with other species of creatures. And if the dinosaurs really disappeared 66 million years ago, how did some of them survive until today? In 2001, paleontologists Zielinski and Budden discovered a hadrosaur fossil in the San Juan Basin in New Mexico. The formation in which the dinosaur bone was found was dated to the Paleocene, approximately 64.5 million years old. This means that not all dinosaurs disappeared at the date established by researchers, some of them surviving for at least another 1.5 million years. Other such survivor dinosaurs have been discovered in North America, China, and other parts of the world. Legends from around the world describe giant reptiles, called dragons, that lived at the same time as humans. The stones discovered by Professor Cabrera in Ica, Peru, which depict people riding or fighting dinosaurs, support this idea. Researcher Donna Patton, who studied the Ica stones, stated, "All of these depictions are very interesting, since the world started talking about dinosaurs since the 19th century, and the stones are thousands of years old." In addition, the stones do not show dinosaur skeletons, but live dinosaurs that seem to interact with humans. This shows that the ancient Peruvians saw and lived alongside dinosaurs. The same researcher is amazed that, although the discoverer of the stones was the head of the Department of Medicine at the University of Lima, an anthropologist and founder of the museum in Ica, the scientific community refuses to acknowledge the authenticity of the stones. And these are not the only representations of dinosaurs during the time of humans. An Hellenistic mosaic at least 2,000 years old, discovered in the 17th century in the Italian town of Palestrina, shows Greeks and Ethiopians hunting on the banks of the Nile. In that mosaic it can clearly be seen how people are hunting a reptile that looks like a dinosaur. Drawings depicting dinosaurs have also been found in caves on Indonesian islands. In Egypt there are many drawings representing apatosauruses. The same reptiles are also found on a Mesopotamian cylinder from around 3300 BC. In addition, scientists from the former Soviet Union have publicly announced the discovery of human footprints in the same layer as dinosaur footprints, dating back 70 to 140 million years, when, according to current scientific hypotheses, humans should not have existed. Many similar footprints have also been found in Dinosaur Valley State Park in Texas. At a press conference in Dayton on August 12, 1989, where Dr. Donner Patton presented photographs of these footprints, 2 evolutionary scientists were present, who the next day searched for the evidence with an iron bar to destroy it. In the Old Testament, creatures that could be considered dinosaurs are encountered. According to the history of the destruction of Bel and the dragon, a book included in the Orthodox Bible, incorporated in the Book of Daniel in the Catholic Bible and considered non-canonical by Jews and Protestants, the Babylonians worshipped a great dragon that was not an inanimate statue, but a living beast. Prophet Daniel killed the dragon by giving it boiled resin, tallow, and hairballs to eat. As a confirmation of the biblical story, reptiles similar to dragons called cirruses are represented on the Gate of Ishtar in Babylon. German writer Willy Ley described cirruses as a zoological enigma of fantastic dimensions, with a forked tongue, body covered in scales, a long, flexible tail also covered in scales, a long, thin, scaly neck, a snake-like head adorned with a horn and wings on their back. The discoverer of the Gate of Ishtar, German archaeologist Robert Koldewey, considered the possibility that cirruses may have been real animals, as their image remained unchanged over time in Babylonian iconography, unlike other fantastic creatures that changed their appearance in art. Not only the Gate of Ishtar was adorned with dinosaurs, but also the Angkor Wat Temple in Cambodia, about 800 years old, has a stegosaurus carved on one of its walls. Another possible dinosaur is described in the book of Job in the Bible. God Yahweh said Job to the Jordan River to look at the animal named Behemoth. Behold now Behemoth, which I made with thee, he eateth grass as an ox. Lo now, his strength is in his loins, and his force is in the navel of his belly. He moveth his tail like a cedar, the sinews of his stones are wrapped together. His bones are as strong pieces of brass, his bones are like bars of iron. He is the chief of the ways of Yahweh, he that made him can make his sword to approach unto him. Surely the mountains bring him forth food, where all the beasts of the field play. He leeth under the shady trees, in the covert of the reed, and fens. The shady trees cover him with their shadow, the willows of the brook compass him about. Behold, he drinketh up a river, and hasteth not, he trusteth that he can draw up Jordan into his mouth. He taketh it with his eyes, his nose pierceth through snares, 40:15-24. Some Bible researchers have matched it with a sauropod based on its appearance, feeding habits, and place of living. In the same book of Job, another such monster is described, which bears the name Leviathan, who can open the doors of his face. His teeth are terrible round about. His scales are his pride, shut up together as with a close seal. One is so near to another, that no air can come between them. They are joined one to another, they stick together, that they cannot be sundered. By his neesings a light doth shine, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Out of his mouth go burning lamps, and sparks of fire leap out. Out of his nostrils goeth smoke, as out of a seething pot or cauldron. His breath kindleth coals, and a flame goeth out of his mouth. In his neck remaineth strength, and sorrow is turned into joy before him. The flakes of his flesh are joined together, they are firm in themselves, they cannot be moved. His heart is as firm as a stone, yea, as hard as a piece of the nether millstone. When he raiseth up himself, the mighty are afraid, by reason of breakings they purify themselves. The sword of him that layeth at him cannot hold, the spear, the dart, nor the habergeon. He esteemeth iron as straw, and brass as rotten wood. The arrow cannot make him flee, sling stones are turned with him into stubble. Darts are counted as stubble, he laugheth at the shaking of a spear. Sharp stones are under him, he spreadeth sharp-pointed things upon the mire. He mocketh the deep to boil like a pot, he mocketh the sea like a pot of ointment. He mocketh the path to shine after him, one would think the deep to be hoary. Upon earth there is not his like, who is made without fear. He beholdeth all high things, he is a king over all the children of pride, 41:14-34. Leviathan is also mentioned in chapter 1 of the book of Job, in Psalm 74, Thou breakest the heads of Leviathan in pieces, and gavest him to be meat to the people inhabiting the wilderness, and in chapter 27 of the book of Isaiah, In the day Yahweh with his sore and great and strong sword shall punish Leviathan the piercing serpent, even Leviathan the crooked serpent, and he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. In the Orthodox Bible it is called the dragon of the Nile. In ancient Egypt, the one nicknamed the Nile serpent, or the evil lizard, was Apophis, a demon who took on the form of a giant serpent, crocodile, lizard, or dragon. In the Book of Enoch, Leviathan is a female monster that lives in the depths of the waters, with Behemoth being her partner who resides in the desert of Dedan. In Satanism, according to Anton Zander Levy, the author of the Satanic Bible, Leviathan represents water. A creature similar to Leviathan is Lotan, the seven-headed sea serpent from Ugaritic mythology. In India there is a lizard named Lotan after this legendary creature. In Norse mythology we can find Jormungandr, the giant serpent that lives in the ocean surrounding the earth. In the Babylonian myth Enuma Elish there is the winged serpent Tiamat, the primordial goddess of the oceans, who gave birth to several snakes and dragons. Her husband, Apsu, was a similar creature. In Greek mythology, the mother of all monsters was the female dragon Echidna, the wife of the winged monster Typhon. Also in Greece we encounter Ladon, the dragon similar to a serpent, the guardian of the Garden of the Hesperides, and Python, the giant serpent that guarded the oracle of the goddess Gaia at Delphi. In Mesopotamia we find Asag, the demon with the form of a seven-headed serpent. In Assyria we find Labu, the monster with lion and serpent features. In Babylon we find Mushashu, the monstrous combination of serpent and dragon. And in Anatolia we find Ilyanka, the sea monster similar to a dragon or serpent. Let's not forget about the seraphim mentioned in the book of Isaiah, the six-winged serpents, or the dragons from medieval Asia and Europe. Is it possible that these creatures, considered mythical, were actually dinosaurs? On one hand we have legends about giant reptiles throughout the world, and on the other we have fossils of dinosaurs across the globe. No matter how much scientists want us to believe that dinosaurs disappeared long before the appearance of humans and that dragons are just mythological creatures, common sense requires us to reject this story. Our ancestors would not have been able to imagine creatures so similar to dinosaurs if they had not seen such reptiles. It is true that they could have discovered fossils, but it is hard to believe that ancient people from all over the world dug many meters underground and, based on some bones, they were able to imagine the exact appearance and lifestyle of those creatures. See the description of Behemoth in the book of Job, referring to where it lived and what it ate. This means that most dinosaurs were indeed destroyed a long time ago, but not all of them, with some even surviving to this day. A good example is offered to us by researcher Mary Schweitzer, who in 2005 found blood vessels in the fossil of a Tyrannosaurus. Of course, the distinguished researcher was amazed by the survival of blood vessels for 68 million years, without realizing that this is impossible and the dinosaur she found is not millions of years old, but much younger. To give a somewhat rational explanation, some evolutionists have stated that it was not about blood cells in that case, but about something else. Others, wiser, preferred not to comment. A decent choice rather than other absurd explanations. Many people claim to have seen dinosaurs in Congo, Australia, Scotland, and the tropical forest of South America. Over 20,000 cases have been counted since the year 2000. According to cryptozoologists, among these possible contemporary dinosaurs there are the Loch Ness Monster, the Beringer and Kasai Rex theropods, the Emelantoceratopsian, the Ngubastyracosaur, the Mahura ankylosaur, the Ngumamonine spinosaur, the Mokumbembe sauropod, and the Mbilumbilumbil stegosaur. If these dinosaurs exist today, why not consider that our ancestors also saw some? And if they saw them, why wouldn't they have introduced them into their stories? And if they introduced them into myths, it means that those monstrous reptiles are not dragons or other similar creatures, but dinosaurs. Even if some dinosaurs survived, who or what destroyed the majority of them? The ancients say it was the gods, and the legends that exemplify this version are many. Let's look at some examples. In Japanese mythology, after being expelled to Earth, the first thing the god Susanoo did was to rule over the forces that already existed on our planet and opposed him. For this he had to kill the eight-headed snake Yamada no Orochi, which devoured the children of the earthly gods. The Greeks believed that the Titans, after defeating their father, Uranus, did not immediately become rulers of the earth. The planet was ruled by Ophion, Snake, and his consort, Eurynomy. The leader of the Titans, Cronus, had to fight Ophion, while his wife, Rhea, had to fight Eurynomy. The reptiles were defeated and thrown into Tartarus, and the Titans became the rulers of the earth. Later, Zeus, the son of Cronus, fought another giant dragon, Typhon, who threatened the gods. With the help of goddess Athena, Zeus defeated Typhon and imprisoned him under Mount Etna. Typhon's wife, Echidna, Viper, was killed in her sleep by the giant Argos. The children of these two monsters, the dragon Ladon and the Hydra of Lerna, were destroyed by the demigod Hercules, son of Zeus. Another son of Zeus, Apollo, confronted Python, the sacred giant snake that guarded the oracle of the goddess Gaia at Delphi, located on Mount Parnassus. In memory of the gigantic snake, Apollo introduced the Pythian games at Delphi, and Pythia, the first priestess of the oracle, was named after the same serpent. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead we encounter the demoness Ammit, the devourer of the dead, a mix of a lion, hippopotamus, and crocodile that eats the hearts of sinners in the afterlife. In the same Book of the Dead it is said that every night, Apophis attacks the boat of millions of years, fighting against the god Ra and his companions, the most prominent of whom is Seth, the god of storm and desert. Apophis, the personification of darkness, takes the form of a gigantic serpent, crocodile, lizard, or dragon. Every night, Apophis is defeated but comes back to life the next day, so the fight resumes every time Ra, the sun, passes with his boat through the afterlife. This fight is a daily reenactment of one that took place long ago between the god Ra and the serpent Apophis. Even though we have established that this battle is actually the story of Sophia's exile, we cannot ignore the reptilian aspect, which evokes dinosaurs. The same is true of the Babylonian creation myth, Enuma Elish, where the gods killed the primordial reptilian beings, Apsu and Tiamat, as well as the army of giant reptiles led by Kingu. A possible interpretation, which we approached, is the one that refers to the planets of our solar system. However, ancient initiates used to combine stories to create new ones, which means that Enuma Elish may contain both the War of the Planets and the dinosaurs' extinction. In Rigveda, a collection of Sanskrit Vedic hymns, one of the 4 sacred texts of Hinduism, the dragon Vritra or Ai, serpent, closed all the waters of the earth. The god of storm, Indra, received weapons from the other gods, just like Marduk in Enuma Elish, killed Vritra, destroyed his 99 fortresses and released the waters. For this feat, Indra received the titles Slayer of Vritra and Slayer of the first dragon. Then he killed Danu, Vritra's mother, with his lightning. In an alternative version of the legend, Indra was aided in battle by the gods Varuna, Soma, and Agni. In an Indian hymn, Sarasvati, the wife of Brahma, the goddess of science and the arts, is credited with killing Vritra, but this is not mentioned in other sources. Indra also became the leader of the gods after his victory against the giant serpent, just like Marduk and Cronus. Other gods of storm, like Zeus, Seth, Susanoo, Indra, or Enlil, who had to fight reptiles are Teshub, Baal, and Thor. In Anatolia, aided by several gods, Teshub defeats the dragon Ilyanka in battle. In Canaan, god Baal kills the 7-headed serpent, Lotan. In Scandinavia, god Thor often battles his great enemy, the giant serpent Jormungandr. At Ragnarok, the final battle between gods and giants, although bitten by the serpent, Thor manages to kill his opponent. But he does not have much time to enjoy his victory, as Jormungandr's venom kills him. And, as we have seen, Yahweh, the God of the Jews, is praised in the Old Testament for the destruction of the sea monster Leviathan and the other water dragons. The legends are clear and the stones of Ika make sense. It was not meteorites or other natural catastrophes that destroyed the dinosaurs, but the gods. Which gods and why? We can find the answer by returning to Sophia, whom we left inert in space after colliding with Jupiter. According to scientists, about 4.5 billion years ago, although their dating methods are questionable, the Earth resembled a huge fireball. The core of the planet is made of molten iron, whose temperature reaches that of the surface of the Sun, that is 6,000 degrees Celsius. Above the core is the liquid mantle and above it is the crust or terrestrial crust, a particularly thin layer compared to the other two. In practice, everything around us rests on a thick layer of only a few kilometers, the rest being a hot sphere of matter. As the Earth cooled, enormous amounts of steam were released from its depths, rising into the atmosphere and giving rise to clouds. Scientists believe that when precipitation began to fall, it did not stop for several millennia. They also believe that the rest of the water on Earth comes from comets that bombarded the planet, thus contributing to the filling of the seas and oceans. However, Enuma Elish suggests that all comets are remnants of Proto-Earth, formed as a result of the impact with Jupiter, and Tiamat was described as a monster of the waters, so water was already present on Earth before the collision with Jupiter. Science also says that after the cooling of the Earth's crust, the only land surfaces were those formed by particularly intense volcanic activity in the early times due to the movements of the 7 tectonic plates. These plates are in constant motion, carrying with them the surface of the land. The movement of the tectonic plates led to the appearance of continents, seas, and oceans. However, Enuma Elish claims that the relief features of the Earth's crust were shaped by the impact with Jupiter. Putting Tiamat's head in the designated place, he made the mountain ranges appear on it. He split the valleys so that rivers would flow through them. Through her eyes, the Tigris and the Euphrates emerged. From her breasts, he made the holy mountains. He made springs from them so that the rivers could drink. 3.8 billion years ago, as science suggests, life miraculously appeared in the waters of the planetary ocean in that hostile environment. At that time, the atmosphere did not contain oxygen, there was no ozone layer, and the waters were full of toxic substances. The first forms of life were unicellular, anaerobic organisms with an extremely simple structure. They evolved into cyanobacteria called stromatolites, with no individualized nucleus, with a long and circular chromosome in the center of the cell, made of a long strip of DNA. They do not have mitochondria, and respiration is performed by the internal surface of the cell membrane, and the cell wall is composed of a mixture of substances, murine, teichoic acids, and pectic substances. Scientists believe that some of these first organisms began to release significant amounts of oxygen into the atmosphere, leading to the formation of the ozone layer, which protects the planet from excessive radiation. It is believed that the Great Oxidation Event occurred 2.4 billion years ago, although a group of geologists in Ireland and India have found evidence of such an event that occurred 600 million years ago. Organisms adapted to the new living conditions and evolved, forming multicellular organisms that ultimately populated the land. However, science cannot explain the reason for the appearance of the first forms of life. More and more researchers tend to believe that RNA, ribonucleic acid, is the molecule that formed the basis of the first organisms, while DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, and proteins appeared later. RNA is similar to DNA, performing many functions in all cells, playing a major role in triggering certain genes and linking DNA and protein synthesis. However, this theory also does not explain the appearance of the RNA molecule. Some claim that it appeared spontaneously under certain conditions, while others believe that the probability of this happening is infinitesimal, and the appearance of a spark of life is a stroke of luck. As the evolutionary hypothesis is not supported, other hypotheses have emerged. The scientists' favorite seems to be panspermia, the theory that there is life everywhere in the universe, being brought to Earth by meteors, asteroids, or comets. However, this option is not conclusive, primarily because it does not explain the appearance of those seeds of life in the universe, and secondly because no living organism can survive passing through the Van Allen belt around the Earth. Evolutionary theories about the origin of life were verified by Stanley Miller as early as 1953. He caused electric discharges in the laboratory under conditions presumed to be similar to the primordial atmosphere, managing to obtain 4 amino acids out of the 20 necessary for life, which he had to immediately separate in order not to decompose instantly under the influence of the hostile environment. Additionally, amino acids do not mean life, they only form proteins. This experiment confirms the law of biogenesis, attributed to Louis Pasteur, which states that living things arise only from other living things, through reproduction. The spontaneous generation of life from dead matter has never been observed, concluded Pasteur. Among the researchers who concluded that life could not arise by chance there was Leconte du Nuit of the Pasteur Institute in Paris. He calculated that the time required for random chemical reactions to form a simple bacterium has a huge value of 10.243 billion years. This is impossible, considering that the age of the universe has been estimated at approximately 20 billion years. Right from the start, life evolved as if there was a goal to be achieved and as if the goal was the appearance of human consciousness, declared Professor du Nuit. Other scientists have reached identical conclusions, such as Professor Harold Morowitz, a physicist at Yale University in the United States, or Douglas T. Axe, a biologist at the University of Cambridge in the UK. The entire complexity encountered at the cellular level cannot arise by pure chance, concluded Francis Harry Compton Crick, Nobel laureate in physiology or medicine and co-discoverer of the structure of DNA. Although the academic community believes that the first life forms developed in water, a group of researchers at Cornell University in New York has discovered that soil is the cradle of life on Earth. Soil, which is a combination of minerals, functioned like a sponge that absorbed all the chemicals and molecules over billions of years. Over time, chemical compounds began to react with each other, giving rise to proteins, DNA, and ultimately to living cells. Researchers were able to obtain proteins from synthetic hydrogel in the laboratory, and Professor Dan Luo stated that the process of transforming soil into life forms likely took place in areas where there is seawater, which forms the compound called hydrogel with the soil and absorbs more chemical compounds. If this theory is true, it could confirm the ancient legends that claim that humans were made of soil or clay. As science is unable to provide a satisfactory explanation for the appearance of life on our planet, and religion prefers one that is far too simplistic. Alternative theories have developed, particularly in the occult community. For example, the esoteric philosopher Rudolf Steiner, founder of anthroposophy, Waldorf education, eurythemy, biodynamic agriculture, and anthroposophic medicine, provided such an explanation. In his book From the Akasha Chronicle, written at the beginning of the 20th century, he spoke of a terrestrial germ of soul essence, which was made of that subtle, malleable, fluid matter which occult literature calls astral. If life could not have arisen on Earth from nothing or brought from cosmic space, is it not plausible that Sophia, who became the Earth, created life? She is the one who created that terrestrial germ of soul essence, as Steiner called it, from which the first unicellular organisms emerged. It was also she who caused evolution, with the first forms of life eventually becoming complex plant and animal species. Creating life in the material world would not have been a first for her, considering that she brought Enlil and other Aeons here using her ability developed after a union with Bythos. However, the impact with Jupiter not only diminished her physical body but also her power, matter being condensed energy at a low vibration. Therefore, she could not attract any more Aeons into her prison. But she could do something else to weaken her adversary, divide him into billions of small entities or spirits, which she could lock up in her prison. The world religions have never recognized this aspect directly, but some of them have included it in their myths. For example, the Yoruba tribe in Nigeria believes that while Orisanla, the primordial being, was in the garden, his servant, Atunda, revolted and struck him with a huge boulder, causing him to become hundreds of Orishas, gods. We do not know the true identity of these two Yoruba deities, but we can guess it. Orisanla was the son of the supreme god Olodumare in the sense that he derived immediately from him and that Olodumare's attributes are revealed through him, as Richard J. Gemin observed in African Traditional Religion in Biblical Perspective, an identical description to that of Nu/Enlil in Gnosticism. And the rebel servant, Atunda, can only be Sophia in Gnosticism. This birth of minor deities, different from the great gods or Aeons, is also found in Gnosticism. Bishop Irenaeus of Lyon noted in Against Heresies that Ialdabaoth/Enlil generated children and grandchildren without anyone's consent, angels, archangels, powers, rulers, and lords. After they were born, his own offspring turned against him, coveting and fighting for dominance. The Scythian Gnostics believed that not Enlil, but Sophia gave birth to those minor gods. In the Gospel of the Egyptians, her sons, Sakla and Nebrul, gave birth to the 12 angels who reign over Hades and chaos. Therefore, we can assume that Sophia is the one who forced Enlil to give birth to those entities, just as Atunda shattered Orisanla into pieces that became Orishas. The Dogon tribe of Mali has also the myth of the fragmentation of a deity, but in a less cryptic variant. For them, the primordial goddess Amma, whom we recognize as Sophia, cut one of her sons, Namo, into pieces that she scattered all over the world to create life. As the Gnostics also considered Ialdabaoth/Enlil to be Sophia's son because he was born by her in the material world, we can recognize the same characters and the same event in this myth. The Dogons do not mention the transformation of Namo's pieces into smaller gods, but they do mention that their role was to create life. Kabbalah seems to shed light on this case, considering that the first being, called Adam Kadmon, was born in the immaterial world, an ethereal entity, part of the energy that governs the entire universe, which religious people call God. In that energy that governs the universe we recognize the Heavenly Father Bythos/Propator of the Gnostics, the first being born from him, Adam Kadmon, being just Nu/Mono genes or Enlil of the Sumerians. When the vessels emanating from him were destroyed, which caused chaos and a rupture in the universe, Adam Kadmon was divided into a multitude of spirits, which contain the same divine energy as the primordial being, that were thrown into the material world, where they became plants, animals, and eventually humans. To find out the origin of the spirits we need to understand the secret teachings of the ancients. For the Gnostics, the first being was an aeon, a first blessed, indestructible and infinite light, an energetic entity called autogenes, the self-begotten, the true aeon, and the aeon of aeons, the great invisible spirit, considered eternal and unborn, ineffable and incomprehensible, who stood throughout endless cycles of years in deep stillness and silence. At some point, this androgynous spiritual entity was divided into Prork/Propator/Bythos and Anoia/Kari/Sigi. The two forms of energy partially merged, giving rise to a new pair of Aeons. In turn, the two newborns created another pair using the same method, and so on, until the spiritual pleroma became densely populated. All these entities were just parts of the primordial energy, autogenes, connected to each other, differing only in the quantity of energy they were formed from. Thus, Bythos/Anu and his consort were entities composed of the largest quantities of autogenes energy, followed by Nu/Enlil and his pair, while Sophia was the smallest energetic form, equal to her siblings in the duocade and decade. By assimilating her pair, Thalidos, Sophia doubled the amount of energy she initially had, equaling her parents, the smallest eons in the Ogdoad, Anthropos, and Ecclesia. Moreover, as the eons were divided into masculine and feminine, she became androgynous following that assimilation. By uniting with Bythos/Anu, masculine energy, she was on the verge of causing a universal catastrophe, which was stopped in time by Horus/Enlil. The multiplication of eons was achieved only through the mixture of masculine entities with feminine ones. The combination of one masculine with another androgynous could have catastrophic effects, which we fortunately do not know. Confined in the sensible universe, Sophia lost some of her power, with matter being created from her own energy. Her dual nature prevented her from giving birth to other eons through natural methods, but the union with Anu gave her the ability to attract eons into her material prison. Her collision with Enlil in the form of the planet Jupiter further weakened her. Therefore, being greatly weakened, she was no longer able to attract her adversary into her material prison, but only small parts of him. These, which we call spirits, are intelligent entities, just like the eons born naturally from the union of one masculine and one feminine. They could even be considered mini-eons, given that there are no differences in the composition of spiritual entities other than the quantity of energy they are formed from. Being broken off from Enlil, these small spirits also represent parts of autogenes, the primordial energy. For this reason, George Robert Stonemead wrote in Thrice Greatest Hermes, 1906, that from the great soul of the universe, all individual souls are born, and in the 1st century BC, the Roman politician Cicero claimed that the human soul comes from the cosmic one. The Gnostic system somewhat recognized this hypothesis, attributing to the soul an origin derived from the work of the demiurge. Enlil himself acknowledged this in the Gospel of Thomas, where Jesus stated, "I am the light that is above all things. I am all. From me everything came forth, and to me everything returns." The Gospel of Philip also suggests the same variant. The soul and the spirit came into being from water and fire. Enlil was symbolized by fire, while Sophia was associated with water, as best observed in Enuma Elish, where she was the goddess of primordial waters. In Athena, Aelius Aristides argued that all beings originated from the head of the goddess, subtly suggesting that humans were born due to her idea. An idea of revenge, to be honest. The tearing apart of Enlil into billions of spirits was aimed at weakening his power. Together they represented a significant amount of energy that would have substantially reduced his power, giving Sophia a significant advantage in her fight against him. The spirits were imprisoned in material bodies, plants, animals, and later humans, just like Sophia, who seems to have understood how things worked in her prison, managing to turn them in her favor. To prevent them from returning to the aeon from which they emanated after the death of their physical bodies, she developed that karmic law spoken of by the Orientals, which involves an endless cycle of reincarnations. Pre-existentialism, the theory initiated by Origen Adamantius, 185 to 254, under the influence of Plato, claims that human souls were all created at once and placed in bodies as punishment, which confirms our hypothesis. Reincarnation is a fundamental part of Hinduism and Buddhism, with the eternal cycle of rebirth seen as a long road of suffering. The classic form of this doctrine was formulated in 9th century BC in India, when the Brahmanic scriptures were written, although it had long existed in oral traditions. The concept was more precisely defined during the Upanishad period, between the 7th and 5th centuries BC, after which it was adopted by other religions originating in India, such as Buddhism and Jainism. By the 3rd century BC, under the influence of Buddhism, reincarnation was also adopted by Taoism. Reincarnation also existed in ancient Egypt. Thousands of years ago, Egyptians mummified important individuals such as pharaohs and high officials so that the deceased could find their bodies intact when their spirits returned from the afterlife. This belief seems to have spread worldwide, being found in shamanism, Celtic Druids, Confucianism, Zoroastrianism, Mithraism, Manichaeism, Pythagoreanism, and Orpheism, among some Native American and Australian tribes, and so on. The great thinkers of the world, regardless of the time or place in which they lived, were adherents to this doctrine, including the Greek philosopher Plato, the Italians Giordano Bruno and Tommaso Campanella, the Scottish philosopher David Hume, the Germans Johann Wolfgang von Goethe and Gottfried Wilhelm von Leibniz, the Russian writer Lev Tolstoy, and the American statesman Benjamin Franklin. A century ago, the English historian George Robert Stonemead wrote in Thrice Greatest Hermes, "From the great soul of the universe all individual souls are born." These are subject to numerous transformations, some leading to a happier state, others to the contrary. And the slowest will be reborn as aquatic beings, these as terrestrial animals, then as birds, and finally as humans. Human souls that attain immortality are transformed into sacred powers. They thus reach the sphere of manifestation of the gods. And this is the highest glory for the soul. The great French philosopher Voltaire also noted in his philosophical dictionary, the doctrine of reincarnation is neither absurd nor useless. It is no more astonishing to be born twice than once. Everything in nature is rebirth. The ancient Greeks were also adherents to this idea. The philosopher Empedocles considered earthly life as an exile, admitting the wandering of the soul through animals or plants until the final purification, which allowed for merging with the divinity. For others, the souls of the righteous awaited the acquisition of a new body in the Elysian fields. There, by sipping from the waters of the Lethe River, they forgot their previous incarnations. For philosopher Plato, the incarnation of the soul was a punishment for sins committed. A virtuous life could lead to the incarnation in a superior category body in an intemperate. Evil life could lead to inferior incarnations. A man could become a woman or, worse, to decay in the vegetable or animal kingdom. Empedocles, Epimenides, and Pythagoras even claimed to remember their previous incarnations. Christianity condemns the belief in reincarnation, although it accepts the idea of possession, another form of incarnation, even though one of the church fathers, Origen Adamantius, said that those who murdered their neighbor must reincarnate to atone for their crimes in the new life. Reincarnation is even mentioned in the Bible. For example, in the Gospel of Matthew, John the Baptist is considered the reincarnation of the prophet Elijah, and his disciples asked him, saying, "Why then say the scribes that Elias must first come?" And Jesus answered and said unto them, Elias truly shall first come, and restore all things. But I say unto you, that Elias is come already, and they knew him not, but have done unto him whatsoever they listed. Likewise shall also the Son of Man suffer of them. Then the disciples understood that he spake unto them of John the Baptist, 17:10-13. In the same gospel, referring to John, Jesus said, And if he will receive it, this is Elias, which was for to come, 11:14. The belief in reincarnation also emerges from chapter 16, verses 13-14, when Jesus came into the coasts of Caesarea Philippi. He asked his disciples, saying, Whom do men say that I the Son of Man am? And they said, Some say that thou art John the Baptist, some, Elias, and others, Jeremias, or one of the prophets. John the Baptist is considered the reincarnation of Elijah also in Pistis Sophia of the Gnostics, where Jesus said, I have found the soul of the prophet Elijah in the aeons of the spheres, and I have taken him from there and taken his soul and brought it to the Virgin of Light, and she has given it to those who receive her. They took him to the sphere of the archons and placed him in the womb of Elizabeth. Thus, the power of the little Iao, the one in the middle, and the soul of the prophet Elijah reunited in the body of John the Baptist, rejoiced to receive John the Baptist. He is Elijah, of whom I said he would come. Chapter 7. The Christian Church abandoned reincarnation when the Roman Emperor Justinian I convened a council in Constantinople in 553, which he forced to eliminate any reference to this belief. The emperor banned the concept of reincarnation because his wife, Theodora, had the blood of many on her hands, but wanted to be deified after her death. Since he could not under any circumstances admit that his wife might be obliged to live at least one more life of penance, Justinian eliminated reincarnation from Christianity. Fortunately for researchers, he did not erase all traces of it. Unlike Christians, Jews did not abandon this mystical conception. The Kabbalists said that 600,000 Jews who sinned with Adam were housed in him. Abraham discovered that there is reincarnation. This way Abel's soul moved into Seth and Cain's into the body of the Egyptian killed by Moses. Jewish historian Flavius Josephus wrote in the Jewish War, Book 3, Chapter 8, Those who depart from life have obtained a place in heaven, from where the wheel of time makes them descend again to dwell in bodies. Also in a manuscript of the Essenes, discovered at the Dead Sea, Brother Yeshua said, Blessed are those who pass through many trials, for their sufferings perfect them. They thus become like the angels of the Lord in heaven and will never die, nor will they ever have to be born again, for birth and death will no longer have power over them, an obvious allusion to reincarnation. This doctrine, encountered in all times and in all parts of the world, could not help but also pass through the careful observation of science. Science does not contradict it, but confirms it, with many researchers discovering countless pieces of evidence for reincarnation. This means that there is a high chance that reincarnation is possible, and it is owed to Sophia, who punished her rival by tearing him apart into billions of spirits, which she then imprisoned alongside her. However, Enlil could not sit idly by, so he tried once again to stop her. This time, not by crushing the earth, but by destroying the life she had created, which was weakening him with every spirit imprisoned on our planet. In a paper published in 1982, paleontologists Jack Sepkoski and David M. Robb from the University of Chicago, United States, identified 5 major extinctions in the history of the Earth, a hypothesis which was subsequently adopted by the scientific community. In addition to these, scientists believe that there were others, but of significantly lower intensity. It is assumed that these extinctions led to the disappearance of 99% of the total 5 billion species that have existed on Earth throughout history. Here are the 5 major extinctions. The extinction between the Ordovician and Silurian geological eras, 450 to 440 million years ago, which led to the disappearance of 60 to 70% of existing species at that time. The extinction in the late Devonian era, 375 to 360 million years ago, which led to the disappearance of 70% of species. The extinction between the Permian and Triassic eras, 252 million years ago, which led to the disappearance of 90 to 96% of species, approximately 96% of marine species and 70% of land species. The extinction between the Triassic and Jurassic eras, 201.3 million years ago, which led to the disappearance of 70 to 75% of species. The extinction between the Cretaceous and Paleogene eras, 66 million years ago, which led to the disappearance of 75% of species, including those of the dinosaurs. With this data, we can establish an evolution of life on Earth timeline. Scientists believe that the Earth formed 4.54 billion years ago and the first form of life appeared 3.5 billion years ago. Life evolved at an extremely slow pace, consisting only of bacteria and other unicellular organisms for 3 billion years. About 542 million years ago, for completely unknown reasons, the Cambrian explosion occurred, which led to the emergence of multicellular organisms. In a short period of time, reported to be approximately 20 to 25 million years, the fauna diversified suddenly, with approximately 50 major groups of organisms appearing during the Cambrian that served as models for modern-day animals. After the Cambrian era, the Ordovician era followed approximately 485.4 million years ago, during which life continued to develop. Although invertebrates, especially mollusks and arthropods, dominated the oceans, fish, the world's first vertebrate animals, continued to evolve. A group of Swiss researchers believe that in the Ordovician, approximately 470 million years ago, a giant asteroid left Jupiter's orbit and hit Earth, falling in what is now northern Europe. Other geologists have discovered that a million years later, several meteorites hit North America, forming the Ames crater in Oklahoma, the Decorah crater in Iowa, the Slate Islands crater in Lake Superior, and the Rock Elm crater in Wisconsin. At the end of the Ordovician, the first major extinction in the history of our planet occurred, the second in intensity, with 60 to 70% of Earth species disappearing approximately 450 to 440 million years ago. At that time, Pangaea, the only continent on Earth, divided into 2, Laurasia and Gondwana. Volcanic activity increased, leading to a deficit of carbon dioxide, which caused an ice age in which the planet's sea level dropped significantly. A small group of researchers have suggested that, at that time, Earth was hit by a gamma-ray burst from a hypernova, the collapse of a massive star located 6,000 light-years from Earth, which halved the planet's ozone, leading to an increase in ultraviolet radiation. After the Ordovician era, the Silurian era followed, approximately 443.8 million years ago, during which life continued to develop despite the recent extinction. The climate warmed, the water level rose, fish species diversified, and life appeared on land in the form of small terrestrial arthropods and small moss-like plants that grew on the banks of water. In the Devonian era, which began 419.2 million years ago, terrestrial life adapted to solar radiation. Plants spread and developed on land, forming forests that covered the continents. By the middle of the Devonian, several groups of plants had already developed roots and leaves. The ancestors of tetrapods began to adapt to walking on land, with their pectoral and swim fins gradually transforming into legs. In the oceans, primitive sharks began to multiply significantly and the first ammonite mollusks appeared. Dry land was represented by 3 continents, Gondwana in the south, Siberia in the north, and Euramerica between them. Approximately 375 to 360 million years ago, a prolonged series of extinctions occurred, which eliminated 70% of species. The most affected was marine life, with all placoderms and trilobites killed. The causes of this series of extinctions remain unknown, although Canadian paleontologist Digby McLaren suggested in 1969 the possibility of an asteroid impact on our planet. According to soil samples from the city of Alamo, Nevada, USA, one or more objects fell from space to Earth 367 million years ago. However, there is not enough evidence to support the hypothesis that these meteorites were the cause of the Devonian extinction series, top of form, bottom of form. The next geological era of Earth was the Carboniferous, which began 358.9 million years ago. Amphibians were the dominant vertebrates on land covered by forests, with one branch of amphibians evolving into reptiles. Arthropods were also abundant. The atmosphere contained the highest percentage of oxygen in Earth's history, 35%, compared to 21% today. Due to climate change during this era, a minor extinction occurred 305 million years ago, which affected the equatorial region forests of the Euramerica continent, leading to the disappearance of many species of plants and animals. This was followed by glaciations, a drop in sea level, and a collision of continents. The Permian era, which began 298.9 million years ago, led to the emergence of mammals, turtles, lepidosaurs, and archosaurs. At that time, the continents had merged into a single one, called Pangaea, surrounded by the planet-wide ocean named Panthalassa. The Permian ended with the largest extinction in Earth's history, in which 96% of marine animals and 70% of land animals disappeared 252 million years ago. The causes of this immense destruction are unknown, with scientists suspecting that it might have been caused by a meteorite impact or volcanic eruptions in the north of Pangaea, which threw dust and ash into the air, forming thick clouds that prevented the sun's light from penetrating. The Triassic, the first period of the Mesozoic, began 252.17 million years ago, according to researchers' calculations. After the previous extinction, life recovered only in the mid-Triassic and continued to diversify. Therapsid reptiles and archosaurs dominated the planet. From archosaurs, dinosaurs emerged, which only became dominant in the Jurassic, and pterosaurs, the first flying vertebrates. Mammals emerged from therapsids at that time. The Pangaea supercontinent separated again into two land masses, Laurasia in the north and Gondwana in the south. The end of the Triassic brought a new extinction, with 201.3 million years ago, where 70 to 75% of species disappeared. Most therapsids, archosaurs, and large amphibians were eliminated, leaving dinosaurs to rule the land, while archosaurs were content with dominating the aquatic environment. The Jurassic followed, also known as the Age of Reptiles, which experienced two more extinctions, the Plien's Bacchian torsion extinction 183 million years ago, which affected aquatic life forms, and the one at the end of the era, the Tithonian extinction. During the Jurassic, the first birds and lizards appeared, terrestrial mammals evolved, and crocodiles left the land to move into the aquatic environment. In the Cretaceous, which began 145 million years ago, new groups of mammals, birds, and flowers emerged. The end of this era brought about a new major extinction event 66 million years ago, which led to the disappearance of dinosaurs, pterosaurs, and giant marine reptiles. 75% of the planet's species were destroyed, including animals that weighed more than 1 kilogram, leaving small mammals and birds as the dominant vertebrates on land. The causes of this extinction are unknown, but scientists prefer the hypothesis of a collision between Earth and a giant celestial body, such as an asteroid or comet. This was followed by the Cenozoic, also known as the Age of Mammals, during which mammals and birds evolved freely. Important climate changes occurred 55.5 million years ago, leading to the disappearance of some aquatic organisms. Earth was struck by a series of glaciations that began 2.58 million years ago. In the Cenozoic era, specifically in the Neogene subdivision, hominids appeared, from which humans or Homo sapiens evolved over time. Although flora and fauna continued to diversify, after the last major extinction event, they only managed to create considerably smaller species. From this official history of our planet, some curious details emerge. Extinctions have struck Earth every time life began to develop massively. After each extinction, life reappeared strongly, diversifying much more. This constitutes a paradox from a logical point of view. Animal and plant species did not evolve in the same way after extinctions, but transformed into more developed organisms than the previous ones, which cannot be attributed to natural evolution. Extinctions are also dubious, not only major ones, but also minor ones, which seem to have had the role of destroying life on Earth. This, too, cannot be attributed to natural phenomena, especially considering that their causes are unknown and researchers base their hypotheses only on assumptions. Therefore, behind the evolution of life and the extinctions that have tried to stop it, there may be one or more intelligent entities. The ancients attributed the last major extinction to the gods, especially the gods of storm, alter egos of the Sumerian Enlil. And they seem to be right, as this information fits perfectly into the story of the gods. We remember that Sophia, the rebellious Aeon, was trapped in the material world, where she managed to attract her enemies. Enlil collided his giant physical body, the planet Jupiter, with Sophia's in an attempt to stop her. The remnant of her body is Earth, our planet. The collision with Jupiter greatly diminished her power, and she no longer could attract Aeons to her material prison, but only to create billions of small spirits from her enemy, which she imprisoned alongside her, their bodies forming the flora and fauna of Earth. Seeing himself diminished by the multitude of entities formed from him, Enlil tried to stop Sophia by hitting her with the first extinction in the history of Earth, hoping that the spirits would return to their origin, making him whole again. However, the rebel Aeon had taken precautions, such as establishing the infinite cycle of reincarnations, which allowed her to bring the spirits back to Earth after each extinction. Time helped her to perfect the process of creating fauna and flora, turning her into a true geneticist, thus succeeding each time in inventing new species, much more advanced than their predecessors. It was not an easy task, considering the complexity of the organisms and especially the structure of the DNA present in all of them. But there is a reason she was called Wisdom. The bodies in which she imprisoned the spirits extracted from Enlil were created using the same method used by her enemy to imprison her. The material world being similar to a supercomputer program, in which bits have been replaced with atoms, Sophia learned to use the virtual program to create her own design, like an intelligent virus that modifies the system in which it was released. Enlil did not give up and continued to attack her, probably driven by despair. The craters on Earth's crust suggest that he hit the planet with various celestial bodies, meteors, asteroids, and maybe even comets. We do not exclude the possibility of using viruses that attack only certain species, which would not be difficult to achieve for the creator of the material world or the programmer of Sophia's virtual prison. His repeated blows eventually had the desired effect, weakening Sophia and reducing her power more and more. According to scientists, after the extinction that led to the disappearance of dinosaurs, only small animals survived. Those that appeared later failed to approach the size of their predecessors. Also, the flora was affected, with giant trees being replaced by much smaller ones. From this we understand that the multitude of asteroids, meteors, or comets thrown by Enlil onto Earth managed to limit her even more. This was not enough for a new sun, Sophia managing to create life, even if at a reduced size. A radical solution was needed to stop her forever. She had to become like in the beginning, before assimilating her pair, Thelitos. Sophia had to be divided into two different beings.